Abraham, a journey of faith and trials. Hello viewers, I welcome you to another episode of Heroes of Faith, and I will be discussing the life and legacy of Abraham, the father of faith. Abraham, originally named Abram, was a key patriarch in the Bible, held in high esteem in Christianity. He is regarded as the father of the Israelite, Edomite, and Arab peoples. God made a covenant with Abraham, promising him numerous descendants in the land of Canaan. Abraham is known for his unwavering faith in God, notably demonstrated when he nearly sacrificed his son Isaac in obedience to God's command. His story is found in the book of Genesis and marks a pivotal moment in biblical history. In the land of Ur, a city of great wealth and towering ziggurats, there lived a man named Abram. He was not a king nor a priest, but a man of some means, with livestock and servants, a man respected in his community. Yet in the quiet of his heart, a stirring arose, a sense that his life was meant for something more, something beyond the customs of his ancestors. His father, Terah, worshipped the moon god, and Abram had been raised in the shadows of these ancient idols. But even amid the religious fervor of Ur, Abram felt a deep longing for a truth that lay outside the idols and traditions of his family's beliefs. One day, as Abram tended to his flocks, a voice called to him, piercing through the veil of his ordinary life. It was a voice unlike any he had ever heard, a command that burned with a power and authority that left no room for doubt. Abram, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. The voice came not with a name, but with a promise, an overwhelming promise that resonated deep within his soul. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. The very foundations of his life, the comfort of his family, the known pathways of his ancestors, were about to be uprooted. Abram stood at a crossroads, torn between the call of the familiar and the beckoning of the unknown. Without hesitation, Abram rose and prepared to leave. His wife Sarai followed him without question, though her heart was heavy with uncertainty. Together, they journeyed to Haran, where they stayed for some time. But the call, it seemed, was not to settle in Haran. The land that awaited them laid further still beyond the great desert. It was at the age of 75 that Abram set foot in the land of Canaan. There, God appeared to him once again and declared that this land would be given to his descendants. Yet Abram, childless and aging, could hardly conceive how this promise could be fulfilled. The years passed, and though he stood in the land of God's promise, his heart was heavy. He and Sarai had no children, and the fear of his legacy slipping into oblivion gnawed at his soul. The promise seemed distant, like a shadow on the horizon. But it was not only his faith that would be tested. There were other trials that would come, famines that would drive him to Egypt, battles against kings that would require all of his cunning and strength, and moments of doubt that would plague even the most steadfast heart. In Egypt, Abram lied about Sarai, claiming she was his sister to protect himself from the Egyptians who would have killed him for her beauty. This was the first of many mistakes, a failure to trust God fully in times of crisis. But even in his failure, God was merciful, and Sarai was returned to him unharmed. Yet the repercussions of this deception would linger in his life, shaping the way others viewed him. It was after these trials that God spoke to Abram again, this time with even more assurance. He would have a son, despite his age, despite Sarai's barrenness. The child would be the beginning of the great nation promised so long ago. Yet Abram's doubt remained, and he turned to the one solution that seemed viable, adopting his servant Eliezer as his heir. God, however, made it clear that this would not be the way of fulfillment. The child would come from Abram himself and from Sarai, though her womb seemed lifeless. But Sarai, weary of waiting, took matters into her own hands. In her impatience, she offered her maidservant Hagar to Abram as a surrogate, thinking this would be the way to fulfill God's promise. And so Ishmael was born, a child who would complicate Abram's life and lead to further struggles in his household. Years passed, and Abram grew old. At the age of 99, God appeared to him again, this time with a covenant that would change the course of history. God changed his name from Abram to Abraham, which meant father of many nations, a name that seemed a cruel jest in light of the childlessness he had endured. But the covenant was not only a promise, it was a sign, a mark that would distinguish Abraham and his descendants. God instructed Abraham to circumcise every male among his people, including himself, as a symbol of the everlasting covenant between God and his descendants. Sarai, too, received a new name, Sarah, and God promised that she would bear a son, Isaac, whose descendants would be the heirs to the covenant. Abraham, despite the impossibility of the promise, fell on his face and laughed, for how could a man of his age and a woman of Sarah's years bear a child? Yet God insisted that it would be so. Isaac's birth was a miracle, a miraculous beginning to the fulfillment of God's promises. Isaac was the child of laughter, the son of hope. But his birth would also mark the beginning of another trial. Years passed, and Isaac grew into a young boy, beloved by his father. And yet, one of the greatest tests of Abraham's faith was yet to come. God called upon Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, the son of the promise, the one through whom the great nation would arise. This was the moment that would define Abraham's character. How could he reconcile the promise of descendants with the command to sacrifice his son? The struggle within Abraham's heart was as intense as any trial he had faced before. Yet he rose early the next morning without question, preparing the wood, the fire, and the knife. As they climbed Mount Moriah, Isaac, unaware of his fate, asked his father, "Where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's answer was both prophetic and heartbreaking. God will provide the lamb. At the top of the mountain, Abraham bound Isaac and laid him upon the altar. As he raised the knife to sacrifice his son, the voice of God called out, "Abraham, Abraham!" And in that moment, God stopped him, providing a ram caught in the thicket to be offered in Isaac's place. This act, this supreme test of faith, solidified Abraham's place as the father of faith. His obedience was a testament to his trust in God, even when faced with the impossible. God reaffirmed his covenant with Abraham, promising that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky, and that through his offspring, all nations of the earth would be blessed. As the years passed, Abraham's life was marked by moments of triumph and failure, faith and doubt. He made mistakes, took matters into his own hands, and sometimes faltered. But his faith, though imperfect, remained steadfast. His relationship with God was one of deep intimacy and trust, even in the face of the unknown. Abraham's life was not without its share of heartache. His beloved Sarah died at the age of 127, and Abraham mourned her loss deeply. Yet even in his grief, he continued to walk by faith. Abraham lived a very fulfilled life. He ended up having many children from Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. He was also very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. At the age of 175, Abraham breathed his last. He was gathered to his ancestors in peace, having seen the beginning of the fulfillment of God's promises. Isaac, his son of laughter, would carry the torch forward. The life of Abraham is a testimony to the power of faith, the patience of God, and the redemptive nature of mistakes. His story teaches us several key lessons. Trust in God's timing. Abraham waited many years for the fulfillment of God's promises, and in his impatience, he took matters into his own hands. But ultimately, God's plan unfolded in his perfect time. Trust in God's timing, even when it seems delayed. Faith through trials. Abraham faced many trials: famine, battles, the question of an heir, and the command to sacrifice his son. Yet in each trial, he was called to trust, and through it, his faith grew. God's grace in imperfection. Abraham made mistakes. He lied about Sarah, took matters into his own hands with Hagar. Yet God never abandoned him. His life reminds us that God's grace is sufficient, even when we falter. Obedience. The test of Isaac's sacrifice reveals that true obedience is surrendering even our most cherished desires to God's will, trusting that He is faithful to provide. God's covenant is everlasting. Abraham's life was marked by the covenant God made with him. This covenant transcended generations, showing that God's promises are faithful and enduring. Abraham's journey, from the call of the unknown to the promises fulfilled, is a story of faith, obedience, and divine provision. Through his life, we learn that faith is not merely believing in God's promises, but trusting Him even when the road ahead is unclear. Through his mistakes and victories, we see the grace of God at work in the life of one man, whose legacy would shape the world for generations to come. That was the life and legacy of Abraham. I hope you were blessed by his story. Thank you for watching and listening. I invite you to look through my channel for other inspiring episodes. Please like and share this video. Also, subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so that you will be notified whenever I drop a new, life-changing, and entertaining video. See you in the next video.